Hi, everyone. We'll let people slowly start joining in, but welcome to our first show and tell, our inaugural one for 2026. I'm Hallie Spradlin, the Director of Visionary here at FS. So, as people are slowly joining in, just a few logistics before we begin the session. We always love to hear from you, and we'd love to keep the conversation flowing, especially in the chat. So be sure that while you're using the chat box, that it's set to everyone so that all attendees, as well as our panel, can see all of your questions, your insights. And also, as a reminder, we will be sharing the recording from today's session, as well as all of the links in the webinar so that you can dive deeper, but also catch up on anything that you may have missed. So before we begin today's session, I'll be handing it over to Ellie from our marketing team to speak about some of our upcoming events and webinars before we dive in.
Hello, everyone. I just want to spotlight two upcoming February events. So first up, on the 12th of February, we have the next session in our Sustainability No Filter series. This month, we are focusing on the Sustainability Perfection Trap. So it's a 30-minute insight-packed conversation on why progress often matters more than perfection and how transparency and honesty are what truly drive impact. And the session will be led by our Director of Sustainability, Emma Grace Bailey. Then on the 18th of February, we are hosting our annual webinar, The Future of Wellness, a 5-year forecast. We'll break down the most important shifts shaping wellness and show how brands are turning those shifts into stronger consumer connection and long-term growth. So you'll walk away with what's next in wellness tech and holistic solutions and where the biggest opportunities lie over the next 5 years. If you haven't registered yet, you can head to futuresnoops.com/events or click the resource button in your Zoom toolbar. But that's it from me. I'll hand it back to Hallie to kick off our first show and tell of 2026.
Amazing. Thank you. So for the purpose of today's session, we will be going back to our kind of OG format and just sharing some links as we start out the year. So I'll be kicking it off, and my first link is kind of just a simple article. I won't be really diving into it, but I feel like it kind of is speaking to a lot of the conversations that we're having internally about kind of how we're at this crossroads between AI generated content, but also the importance of showing up really and truly authentically and what that means for both brands and also just creativity in general. And this piece kind of talks about how showing either the behind the scenes process of your work or showing the visible imperfections or errors of the process or the actual product actually becomes this new form of creative currency in this age of automation. And it kind of shows that human effort behind the product or even building trust in the process is just really, really important. And one of the examples that I really love that it points out in this product that you may have seen is the new Apple TV intro that plays in the beginning of all of their media. So this intro was created using all practical effects, even though it is just a 5-minute or a 5-second clip. But the reason that they created it by hand manually is because they felt that craft should be felt and not faked. And even though it is digital, it just shows that the process and the value behind creating things by hand is just so important. So just kind of wanted to set this as like almost the thesis for some of my other links, but I just felt like the article goes into a few other examples about showing the process behind creativity and how transparency about it opens up a sense of camaraderie within the design community and how it can often feel really exclusionary or exclusive, and how sometimes even just sharing the journey can be as impactful as the work itself. And I thought that was a really beautiful kind of, I don't know, sentiment to go into the new year with. So kicking that off kind of really leads also nicely into my next link. And this isn't particularly new, but I have been sitting on it for a while and I'm really excited to share. But this is talking about the work behind one of my favorite film director, his actually longtime partner in his film posters, Vasilis Marmatakis, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's a Greek artist. He's the designer behind pretty much all of his film posters. And I was so excited to see this piece and a lot of pieces kind of diving in behind his process because I loved learning that he does all of his film posters pretty much manually in an analog way. So his process every like for all of the films, which he's worked with Yorgos Lanthimos since his early films, starting in like 2006. He starts by receiving the script for the films and thousands of film stills. So basically, he prints out all of the film stills by hand and starts cutting out different stills. So he cuts out like the actual faces, the frames, and he begins experimenting trial by error. He like collages them together, almost like intuitively free form. He works a lot with a lot of empty space. He kind of works with text in different colors, just like works actually freehand and then ends up scanning them and works with different colors and different types of paper and printing. And he talks about how the challenges that you can't obviously feel or tell the entire story of a film with a single image, which is the challenge of a film poster, but you can generate tension and you can create emotion. So he sets out to create these visual metaphors for the themes and the emotions depicted in the films. So I just love how he kind of works on these films, and they are some of my favorite posters. And I love obviously all of his films for different reasons, but I also really, really love his posters as well. So it's just really interesting his process, how he dives into it. It's also interesting because he started the designer as a graphic designer, and he talks a lot about how, like, when he was learning, he never actually properly learned how to use Photoshop, but he just started kind of tinkering in Photoshop. And he was like, okay, well, I know what I want to make, but I don't actually know any of the techniques of how to do it. So I'm just going to start like experimenting with it. And then when he started making posters, he was like, okay, I don't actually know how to do this either, which is why he started printing things out and doing it by hand because it was the only way he knew how to make his vision come to life. So I just really appreciated that kind of form of taking creativity into his own hands. So my other link that kind of goes along with it was talking about his newest poster for Begonia, which came out last year, because he also created the um, the typeface, and he creates the typefaces for all of the films as well. But he created this typeface for this film. He creates bespoke fonts, which adds this other layer of visual identity, and he creates it in this almost old school way of working. So this typeface in particular it's called Churchward Round Squad, which was created by a Samoan-born graphic designer who passed away several years ago, and he really loved this typeface. He kind of found it in these archives. He contacted the daughter and she gave permission to use this typeface. So ended up scanning all of this, creating it by hand, printing it out again. And then because he wanted it to feel organic, he actually printed it on paper and started splashing it with paint. So if you can notice like the little intricate details that are like slightly smudged, it makes it feel so organic. So there are these like little imperfections that come through. I just thought that detail was so beautiful. And again, it's like you couldn't tell like with the unseen eye when you're watching the movie or even looking at the poster, but just this analog way of working and the attention to detail I thought was so impactful and beautiful. And then all of these different variations of posters that he creates for the films is just really, really incredible and adds another layer to my favorite director. And then again, a small next link is Yorgos is creating a, or he has a new ad for the Super Bowl this is a teaser for it, but apparently he is directing two Super Bowl ads. This one is for Squarespace, so I'll play the teaser for it. Let it play. So, one, I think it's interesting because the Super Bowl has kind of become this place where I feel like it used to be such an interesting place where ads would come out on the day, and it was like a lot of buzz around it because it was like, what are the ads going to be? They used to be really creative, and I feel like now it's kind of like the ads play weeks and weeks before. It's not really interesting anymore, but the fact that this like really conceptual and cinematic director is attached to not only one, but he's also attached to a Grubhub commercial apparently. So just honestly, I'm just really curious about this idea that a more art house director is directing a Super Bowl ad. So something interesting there. I'm curious to see what it will be. And then for my last links, I'm sure most of you have seen the Valentino Couture show or the presentation for Spring Summer 26, which of course was gorgeous, but I was particularly obsessed with the set design and the kind of spectatorship that was designed around this concept of the Kaiser panoramas. So these were these entertainment devices or pieces that were popular in the 19th and early 20th centuries. They were somewhat the earliest forms of cinemas, and they would consist of these viewing stations where people could sit around, and inside were these devices of these like rotating stereoscopic images. They would show current events, they would show other places around the world, and I really loved how they would how these were reconceptualized in this show. Um, the show was titled Speculi Mundi, which to me was this really interesting commentary on kind of the voyeurism of the fashion industry. I feel like we've talked a lot about how this like gaze and this spectacle has come to life in recent seasons. But I'll show this kind of video of what this looked like. I'm sure most of you have seen, but I thought it was just so stunning. And I just really, really loved it. Um, Obviously the pieces, but yeah, I just think that like on one hand, there's so much to appreciate the value, the craftsmanship of the actual clothing, the setup, the spectatorship. But on the other hand, like what are the optics of drawing so much attention to this extreme displays of wealth and luxury in a time where there is so much economic disparity? I think the literal and metaphorical acts of so much interrogation and spectatorship from like kind of this historical time of mirroring our own reality now is just really fascinating to me. I think it proves that our culture and fashion is really cyclical, and I just really loved kind of the way that they set up this show. But I also feel like I learned a lot about these Kaiser panoramas and was really fascinated by it. But those are my links, and I'll pass it over to Rachel.
Thanks, Hallie. I'm so excited for a Super Bowl commercial just from that one. Um, so my first links on here, they connect a lot with actually your very first one there. So I love that you shared that human touch. And these are really about kind of finding that trust in the process that you also spoke to, Hallie. You can click the first one there. So this is a new collaboration that came out with two activewear brands I really loved. And we also love when it's a collaboration that just makes sense. And this is really that. So this is two brands here. One is Norda, and these are their shoes. They're trail running experts. Their products are made from indestructible materials such as Dyneema. And they teamed up with Nur. And this is a creative force behind a lot of different designs. He used to work at Nike. So really creative thinking outside the box when it comes to technical gear. And also the construction choices are really spectacular as well. So this is a bit of a preview of their collection, which just dropped at the end of January. But then this t-shirt, but in my second link, I wanted to highlight a t-shirt in specifics from this collection. And here in this collection, they wanted to visualize the essence of stripping things back and putting the focus on purpose and creating this approach with minimum construction for maximum effort. And I love this t-shirt. So they created this one piece that is actually made to be destroyed. And there's small holes that are all over this t-shirt. It's made from a single panel of warp knit garment dyed Italian nylon. What's really cool is it allows you to remove the panels of the fabric and transform it into everything and anything really under the sun. It can be a crop top, it can be a tank top. I think there's 36 different ways to customize for body length, sleeves, and necklines, everything. So I really love this t-shirt. I think this is something that we're going to see more and more, sort of this choose your own adventure. And it fits really, really well into this collection as well. And then in my link after that, it's not an activewear designer, but I love how it sort of complemented this idea again of really the wearer creating their own process at the end of the design. I shared this for our internal pitch day with the team, but I wanted to share with the show and tell here. So the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam, they teamed up with a Dutch creative, Camille Fortkins, to present the Cut to Wear t-shirt. So this is a limited edition garment that was sold at the museum. And it really only comes to life after the wearer takes scissors to it. So it's this sort of experimental design. They really wanted to reverse that industrial production process of fashion, redefine what a t-shirt can be. And this designer is well known for embracing the art of imperfection, allowing the designs to showcase the beauty of the process, that sort of prototype mindset. So looking at some crooked seams on the finished edges and visible construction. So I absolutely love this t-shirt design. It arrives super flat. It's a double layer textile, similar to the t-shirt I showed before. It has these embroidered contoured lines, so you can leave it completely untouched. It's more of like a piece of art, a flat object. Or you can cut it out and then it becomes that t-shirt, and it's really up to you to define that final form. So if you want it to be super precise, really clean, or you can take that more regular approach and reveal more of that process that's behind that typically flawless, typically ready-made product that we're all used to, and it becomes definitely a one-of-one piece. So again, I really liked these back-to-back designs for the t-shirt, and I think that quite interesting to see that for the future when we're speaking about what's new and what's different in terms of design. And then in my second link here, another Dutch designer, but this is a project that's been going on for over 30 years. So I think that you've either seen it before or welcome to it if this is your first time. But it's a project called Exactitudes, and Hypebeast recently did a focus on this project, which I love to see from 5 days ago. But it's a duo from the city where I live in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. So it started off in 1994, a photographer named Ari and a stylist named Ellie. They started this project documenting this unconscious uniformity and dress codes among specific social groups. Started in Rotterdam, and I think that they've since looked at other cities and other countries as well. But they've been working on this project for over 30 years, and specifically the latest print edition book will be their final. So this is why they're putting the attention really on this long project. But the project Exactitudes, it combines exact and attitudes. So it always features 12 photos to showcase that paradox of individuality. So when you think you're being different, maybe you're really not. But I loved in this project, it says, if uniformity spells out the death of personal style, maybe our fear of sameness is something worth learning from. Because even when we think I'm one of a kind, we really are doing that in unison. So for me specifically, as trend forecaster, I think I was really especially drawn to this project. I don't know if the rest of us can agree, but it's kind of how the brain starting to connect the dots and how they all click together, the patterns, especially when out in the streets and you see one item, you see two items, and all of a sudden it's like that trend starts forming before your eyes. So I really love this project. And I think that it was really interesting is that the duo, they really spent countless days looking at all sorts of streets, clubs, churches, cafes, malls to scout the subjects before they bring them in and shoot them in the studios. But I also love this quote. It says, the most memorable places we've been to are the most mundane. Boredom is excellent because it asks you to look harder. Hype is just too easy. So again, putting that attention on the art of being bored and then the beauty that comes from that.
I love that.
And then my last, before you click this, I'll just speak to it first here. So closing out the links, there is a new video series from a 3-part video series from the New York City-based Gumtree Golf and Nature Club. And they created 3 videos to showcase golf through a different lens. The first video was titled Patience, speaking about how nothing lasting ever hurries, such as nature, but also as a slow fashion brand in a sort of fast fashion world. Second was about balance, which is speaking about juggling things in life and finding balance in sport and nature. And this last one just premiered, I think, last week. It's called Perspective, and I think this one was my favorite of the three, and that's why I want to share with all of you as well. But it really gave the reminder to put things in perspective, the beauty of seeing something that you do on a regular daily basis in a new light, really finding that renewed appreciation in the everyday. So it really hit home for me. And I also love to see a golf brand sort of take this cinematic angle. And I also really love the sound. So if you're able to play the video with the sound, that would be great.
You got it.
We had a whole concept planned at a certain Sydney course to shoot this entire episode from one vantage point, to show how many different ways there are to view a single moment if you slow down long enough to look. But then the course fell through and we had to pivot. Instead, we found ourselves at a scrappy little 9-hole course on a cliff. The kind of place held together by the salt air, dog walkers, and the quiet dedication of whoever mows the greens each week. We tried to shoot the concept anyway, force it into existence. After a few hours of trying, the answer was clear. It just wasn't going to work. Then, sitting there, tired, defeated, and out of ideas, we saw him. Humpback whales, migrating north, right in front of us, like moving shadows just under the surface. There was no famous golf course, no bucket list tee shots, just two whales and the two of us. A blip on their 10,000-mile journey they'll never think about again. But we'll remember, probably forever. We didn't get the course we wanted. We got something better.
Did you hear that?
And from that cliff, I forgot all about golf. And I realized we shot the concept. After all.
Thanks. And it was a little bit of a long video, but it was so beautiful. It really reminded me throughout the design process, even if things aren't going exactly according to plan, like there's still something that might happen at the end. So I love that they had that pivot, and I love they named it Perspective. So I'm happy to share with all of you.
So great. Thank you, Rachel. Go over to Maria.
Hi, everyone. And Rachel, that was amazing. That was the most mentally soothing thing I've seen. So my research today really revolved around wellness clubs. And so this is just an article I came across. It's a really good article. I highly recommend. It's about wellness clubs starting to really look like wellness clubs. And if you scroll down a little bit, So I thought it was kind of on the way coming because I've seen a lot of gyms incorporate more of this nightclub energy with either really pumping music or the lights are dimmed down. So I've definitely seen the trend of that nightclub workout sort of synergy. But here we're seeing it kind of replace nightclubs in general. So we've definitely noticed the decline in club culture, the decline in alcohol purchases. So there's a space for this kind of new way to kind of socialize in a third space. So if you scroll in the middle, they have this amazing kind of call out, which I really like. It was called, let me see. I think they called it the post-fun era, like that we've entered like the post-fun era. And I thought that was such a good point to think about because millennials were very hedonistic and our tagline was you only live once, live fast, die young, but this generation don't really see it that way. So their cultural attitude is very inward. So they are looking for experiences where they can be inward, but collectively. So that made a lot of sense to me with this sort of new nightclub, wellness club hybrid. And then at the bottom of the article, they talk about how the design of these wellness spaces are clearly meant to look like nightclubs. So they're intentional. They want to keep it sexy. They want to cultivate a more of a kind of sensual space. So you can click onto my next link, which is basically one of the venues that are featured in that previous article. And I was able to go to it a month ago. So it was quite a learning experience for me. So you can click on it has like a tab where it says the space. That will give you kind of a bit of a good view of what it was like. It's at the top there, the space. So I went in, you're greeted by this beautiful cocktail bar. The bartender is also a nurse, and they give you a menu in which it starts off with these like beautiful alchemy drinks. And then it kind of, as you scroll down a little bit, you start to see like, okay, there's IV infusions. And then in the end, there was a full blood panel option. So they could do comprehensive blood work on you. So it was like a hybrid of like a clinical space, but also keeping it super sexy. Everything's very like aesthetically driven. So I chatted a little bit with the guy who created this space. First of all, it's called Higher Order. It's in West Palm Beach, Florida. It's kind of isolated. So it's in a warehouse in the middle of nowhere. You kind of need to know someone to get in. And he told me that they have about 900 applicants for the annual membership, which is pretty pricey. So he said, like, we don't accept everyone. We have to filter through who kind of fits our vibe. And then, we're creating our community. But what was also interesting is that he really wants this to be looked at as like almost like a party place. So I'm unsure how that actually merges together because the sort of escapism fun you have in a nightclub is really hard to create sober. So I'm curious to see how it's going to manifest. I think it will kind of go down breath work, somatic dancing, maybe more in that area. But this was a really incredible experience. If anyone is in West Palm Beach, I highly recommend at least try it once. No need to do the blood work. The drinks are pretty good though.
My brother's actually moving there, so when I go visit,
you have a recommendation.
Yeah, it's like now I have a place to go. Amazing. Thank you, Maria. All right. I'll pass to Jane.
Okay, so I have a few different links kind of surrounding the same idea, which is I guess, a trend or style I've been seeing come up in photography where it's incorporating a lot more physical arts and crafts. So if you just want to click on the first link. So first we have this photo shoot for Bloomin' House magazine. It's highlighting the style of creative director Inez Kerma. I'm going to read a little excerpt from the blurb in it that kind of really helps encapsulate what this story is about. Through collage and refined manipulation, photography slips towards the language of painting, inviting blur, grain, and tactile imperfections. It becomes a meditation on our collective yearning for the essential, reframed, and reimagined through today's visual language. So this style really emphasizes, again, that grain and texture that makes it feel a lot more like a painting and a little bit more rough and imperfect, kind of drawing back to Hallie's links as well. And more of that like blurry look than the high def, airbrushed, AI edited imagery that we're becoming overwhelmed by. And then if you want to go to the next one. And you can just kind of scroll through this Instagram account. So this is Sylvester Mako. He's a very creative photographer who I think has been definitely having a moment online. He had a fairly viral shoot recently with Rama Douaji, the First Lady of New York, as well as Elle Fanning. I also saw that one make the rounds more recently. And he has this really cool kind of collage and hand-drawn aesthetic that he combines with the photography. And it makes for a really surrealist yet kind of grounded in a physical presence look. And it has more roots in reality as well as human craft. And I feel like these aesthetics are kind of a response to how much we've been seeing so much AI, quote unquote, artwork and kind of conveying proof that a real person had a role in this. And then the next one is artist Jana Frost. And she created entire photo shoots with sets that are just printed out imagery, hand cut, pasted together to create just these entire sets and props. And it makes for just a really stunning set. And it kind of goes back to more an immersive environment created through illustration and vintage black and white inspirations. And again, just looking at kind of collage and cut paper within photography. And she kind of talks about the impact of seeing art in the real world, definitely as an antidote to the complications of incorporating computers and digital aspects. So finding that return to craft again within photography that really kind of proves that there's humans involved in this. And then the last one. So this is Eloise Labarbe Lafont, I believe is how you say her name. She does photography and then hand paints over the black and white photography to add color and really adds kind of a dreamy look similar to colorized versions of old black and white movies where there's still that kind of ashy undertone to it. And it just makes it feel really cinematic and very like kind of antiqued in a way as well. So just overall, these four artists, I feel like really show the rejection of AI generation and kind of a move back into the physical arts that have a definite human touch and show the impact of human creativity, and also kind of strive to minimize the time that art spends within a computer.
Yeah, I really love these. I love this last one too. The colors feel so interesting, so gorgeous. Thank you, Jane. And we'll get over to Isabel.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Jane, that was a perfect segue. I'm talking about a different Eloise, but I loved what you presented. That's so beautiful. But this is so fitting that it's our first show and tell after the holidays. And I'm sure many people like me maybe watched Eloise at Christmas time, which I find a very classic Christmas movie. But I was kind of thinking about what's next for Eloise at the Plaza. And actually, Hallie, if you go to my first link, please, there is a new Eloise at the Plaza movie, and I think it should be coming out in 2026. But you can see the little girl in the middle. She's the new Eloise, and Ryan Reynolds is attached, but also Amy Sherman Palladino of Gilmore Girls and The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. She's directing it. But a lot of people are attached now that seem really exciting, like Sally Hawkins from The Shape of Water. I see Victor Garber. So I think the cast is growing and it should be a really exciting kind of evolution of this character. I think a lot of children probably their first introduction to her. So I'm excited to see what this will be. But just still on the Eloise vein, if you go to my second link, please. You can I've already been seeing a lot of Eloise collaborations happening. So Petit Plume just put out a pajama collection for both adults and children, with obviously pink and white stripes, very Eloise. But this is kind of going to take shape, I would say, for the next couple months or so. It's really exciting to see this, especially for kids and adults. And then my next link, Hallie, this is actually how I kept thinking about Eloise and where she was today. I was introduced to this perfume about a couple years ago, and this is a great small perfume brand. I love them. I love their scents, but I thought this was such a sweet concept, and it's a really great perfume. So it's kind of exciting to see it, in beauty and fashion. I think a lot of home with like muddier pinks, probably for a grown-up Eloise. But all that to say is just kind of watch this space for Eloise at the Plaza in 2026.
Very cute. Like it's also the perfect like little Halloween, oh my God, Valentine's Day tie-in as well. All right, now to Anush.
Hi, everyone, and thanks to my lovely colleagues here with their great links. I'm going to be also speaking to the wellness conversation a little bit that Maria kicked us off with. So my first link is a link to Laura Riley's pretty popular Substack, shopping Substack called Magazine, which I'm sure many of you are aware of and subscribers to, which started in 2021 and has grown to about 50,000 subscribers. So Riley announced recently that she's getting into the longevity and aesthetic focused game with a new project called High Touch. If you want to click on my second link, that takes us right to the announcement, Hallie.
Yep.
And in it, she speaks to some of the treatments and appointments that she recently had.
Has gotten wonky.
Okay.
Sorry. Oh. Maybe I'll go back to sharing.
We'll be with everyone in a second. Here we come. Okay. Yeah, so you can click right there, High Touch, and in it, Riley basically runs down all the treatments that she has had this month or in January, including Botox, M-Face, seeing her orthodontist, plastic surgeon, personal trainer, as well as outlining her daily supplement stack and tracking every meal she consumed in January. So rounding out this routine, which probably was an anomaly for her getting into this new venue of longevity, but she said that High Touch will focus on tracking this longevity seen through personal interviews, medical advisories, firsthand journeys, and anonymous tips. And clearly there is an overlap with fashion and beauty, so it's really interesting. She is expanding her media view with this, and we've seen the Financial Times cover this space as well with their longevity project. And while personally, when I first saw this announcement, I was a little taken aback by her entire routine, speaking about some of the things that some people are speaking to in the chat, like how can we focus so much on our own personal optimization with what's going on in the world? But this is big business and people are really paying attention to it. So it's clear media is really watching this space and obviously wanting to capitalize on it. So my next link also speaks a little to wellness culture. And I'm a huge sauna fan, so I'm really happy and excited to see this news, especially as someone that has been going to the Russian bathhouse in New York's East Village for a very long time. And if you know, you know. So New Yorkers are really in for a treat as the culture of bathing, this Substack as well, put together a list of bathhouses that will be opening in New York this year and next, really marking this bathing renaissance that our beauty and wellness team has spoken to for quite a while now. There'll be membership focus models targeting regular bathers at Lore Bathing Club, and at Chouette in Tribeca, it'll be more focused on European bathing traditions with kind of this more downtown club culture that Maria mentioned, positioning the bathhouse as a social venue with a wine bar, dinner parties, and artist takeovers. There's a few other that are mentioned, one that's really focused on longevity and biohacking, And there's also a couple coming next year that are more community oriented, including Reunion Baths and Sund, which are more communal bathing, more accessible price models, and those interested in making saunas and bathing part of their routine rather than a luxury. So really opening up that space. My final link really segues us nicely. Culture of Bathing will also be hosting the first New York Sauna Festival, which is coming up in a couple weeks and will include a takeover of the Williamsburg waterfront with 17 saunas and cultural programming, including guided sessions, music, performances, and food. And this kind of alternative ways of gathering is something we've been talking about for a while here at FS. And I know the beauty and wellness team has also mentioned this and the uptick in sauna culture. So really seeing the sauna benefits become more and more evident, and the fact that people are really looking for a place to gather in a more community-oriented ways that is not just focused around food or alcohol. So dovetailing nicely with what you said, Maria, and get yourself to the sauna festival if you are in New York. I am absolutely jealous and would love to be there. So that's it for me.
Yes, I volunteer to cover this for our site, actually.
Close to the author.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is amazing. I feel like I have so many friends and people who like have joined all of these like sauna clubs. Like they're like almost like Maria was mentioning, like the new private club. It's yeah, a really cool new culture. So this is perfect. And then last but not least, Peter.
Hi everyone. All right, I feel like I have to preface my first link a little bit. I was thinking about so this was my part of my pitch for our kind of internal pitch day that kicks off the season, and I think a really good way of kind of tapping into the overarching cultural conversations that really kind of define this current moment in the zeitgeist is by looking at the word of the year, which might seem a bit silly at first, but it's actually a really kind of telling way of kind of figuring out what shifted perspectives or kind of dominated the waves of culture. We can click into the first one, which is parasocial, which is the word of the year for 2025 as awarded by the Cambridge Dictionary. Of course, I'm sure we're all familiar with the word, but it refers to involving or relating to a connection that someone feels between themselves and a famous person they do not know, or a character in a book, film, TV series, or artificial intelligence. And you can kind of just scroll down, Hallie. But it's interesting that they are kind of claiming that because of kind of our relationships with AI and AI chatbots becoming so popular and common, AI bots have actually joined celebrities as objects of parasocial devotion, which is really interesting. We won't have time to kind of dig into all of this, but if you want to do a scroll right down to the bottom, I encourage everyone to look at the link in their own time because they've kind of built out a really great timeline of how this has all kind of come to be. And they reference things like, Beatlemania and of the 60s and soap operas of the 70s to social media influencers today. And now, of course, all of these like AI chatbots and all of that. So really interesting kind of deep dive here. And a nice segue to my next link, which I wanted to talk about Cloudy Heart. It should just be to her Instagram page, and we can just do a scroll here. But this is Cloudy Heart. I'm quoting the Interview magazine here, but she loves energy drinks. She has a pet ferret and vapes a lot. She skips dinner and shows up 2 hours late to your party in a t-shirt that she borrowed months ago and never returned. So this is actually a neo pop star who has released a full bedroom pop catalog, live streamed to thousands, even launched a clothing line, and collabed with brands like Ekhouse Latta. And the crazy thing is that she's not at all real, which is really interesting. So she's actually the latest project of a digital artist called John Rathma. And ID Magazine did a whole story on her. So they kind of described her as not a person, but a condition, desire, consumerism, and performance compressed into a single figure designed to be looked at and wanted. So it's really interesting because she's releasing music and, of course, competing with artists. And I feel like there's like actual human artists. I feel like there's a lot to unpack here about kind of what that means for artistry and she's like kind of climbing the charts, which is really interesting. and how they're kind of using kind of her kind of using relatability and this like terminally online kind of aesthetic, kind of reminiscent of like early Tumblr days to kind of promote her and her music. It's kind of like a really interesting space to watch. So I kind of keep your tabs open on her and what's happening with kind of AI and music. It's a very, very interesting space for sure. And then I know we're running out of time, but my next link is another word of the year, which is by Merriam-Webster, and they awarded the word slop as word of the year. So, of course, slop kind of refers to digital content of low quality that is produced usually in quantity by means of artificial intelligence. Like slime, sludge, or muck, slop has the wet sound of something that you don't want to touch. So slop oozes into everything. Originally in the 1700s, it meant soft mud, and then in the 1800s, it came to mean food waste, as in pig slop. And then now, kind of more generally, means rubbish or product of little to no value. And it's really interesting that this is kind of all happening as we see like the rise of AI art and all of that. And if you can click on my last link, it's just a quick TikTok. I'm seeing this kind of almost like a counter reaction to all of the AI art that is coming through. This is a makeup tutorial that I just fell in love with. And it says that the more AI I see, the more I crave imperfection. And it's just this really amazing kind of makeup tutorial using kind of unconventional technique, but achieving a really beautiful result. And there's something about this that feels really rebellious and really human, kind of linking back to, in a way, to what Hallie was saying in the beginning about human touch. I feel like it's coming through in the social media space in a really big way, especially from younger creators who are kind of rejecting some of the kind of perfection created by AI.
I love this video so much. I feel like I've watched it so many times because if I did it like this, I feel like I literally would like, I don't know, like either break all my makeup or like actually look like a monster.
I mean, it takes talent for sure. I
Yeah,
love it.
like the actual talent required to make it look really cool as well. But I love it. Well, thank you so much. I feel like this was really amazing and a great way to kick off the year. So thank you to all the editors and thank you for joining us all. And yeah, we'll see you next month.